Are you ready to take your business to the next level? Every day there are countless books and articles that are published offering the key on how to make your business a success. It's easy to feel overwhelmed trying to keep up and run your business. That's why Deb Creer created the Business Power Hour. Keep up on the latest trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. Let the Business Power Hour do the heavy work for you.
Good morning, good morning. I am Deb Creer, and I am passionate about giving professionals the tools that they need to make themselves and their businesses as successful as possible. And today we're going to be talking about something that is the new fad, the new rage, the new, oh my God, I have to do it again. And the thing that so many people are saying they need tips on, and that's Zooming, video, whether it's, Microsoft or Facebook or Zoom or whatever it is, we are now spending far more time on camera than we ever thought we would be doing. And that's going to continue. And so we want to make sure that we're presenting ourselves in the best way, in the most professional way. And so today I am so delighted to have an expert in this to talk with us. So please join me in welcoming Shelley Golden to our program today. Welcome, Shelley.
Thank you. Thank you. So glad to be here.
Perfect. Well, let me tell people just a little bit about you. So Shelley Golden is the owner of Shelley Golden Style. She's an international personal branding image consultant, fashion stylist, and certified color consultant with more than 20 years of experience. Shelley is passionate about helping individuals and corporations create a strong personal brand by boosting confidence and having greater influence to attract ideal clients, both socially and professionally. Shelley believes that wearing the right colors, shapes, and styles for the body you have attracts the people you want to attract. Being a fourth generation in the clothing and fashion business, Shelley's rich experience as an image consultant, fashion stylist, costume designer, costume historian, and tailor puts her in a unique category to understand all the elements it takes to create a powerful and successful personal brand from head to toe. Having lived in Europe and the Middle East for 15 years, Shelley brings her understanding of international style and the nuances of style into the workplace from various parts of the world. So again, Shelley, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, I always want to hear a little bit about how you got to where you are and how you discovered that this is your passion. And I love that this is fourth generation for you, but how did you decide that this really was what you wanted to do?
Yes, being fourth generation, it's a bit of a genetic predisposition. I can't help myself.
Right.
So my great-grandfather made fur coats in Russia.
Ooh.
My grandfather had a men's clothing store. And weirdly, both my mom and dad grew up in the men's clothing business. So from the time that I was a little girl, I would go out of the house and my mom would say, "You can't go out of the house thinking like that." And like, what do you mean? What's wrong with my striped shirt and my plaid bottoms?
Yeah. And everybody wears this.
Right. What did I know? I was a kid. But I eventually learned what was wrong with that, why it didn't work, and how to fix it. So much so that I didn't have to please mom anymore. I figured it out all by myself. And actually, weirdly, about 2 months ago, I was thinking back when I was in college. I had an internship in Houston, Texas for 4 months. And for a couple of days, I actually was asked to help the personal shopper. And I just thought that was great. And I thought, this is what I want to do. So that was a very, very long time ago, a couple of decades ago, needless to say. So this is really what I've always wanted to do. But I've since worked in wholesale retail, put on fashion shows. This is the third time I've actually had an image consulting business in 3 cities on 2 continents, because I lived in Abu Dhabi and Amsterdam for 15 years. So just really understanding how people put themselves together, how they adorn themselves. And I'm a tailor, seamstress, color consultant, costume designer, costume historian. So I just put all of that together and I'm just super passionate about helping people look their best, because my mom would not let me out the door until I looked great.
I love it. I love it. And it's interesting because we have been thrown into this Zoom era. But one of the things that I was thinking about before, we were chatting was the fact that many people home office anyway, before this ever started. And I always have a discussion with people as to how they dress when they're home officing, video, Zoom, any of that aside. Did they dress like they were dressing to go into an office? Or did they, maybe have their pajamas on all day, or at least a t-shirt or things like that? And I tend to be pretty casual, but I know people who really do dress exactly like if they were going into an office every day. And they said it makes them think about it differently. It's no longer a home office. It's an office.
Right. Actually, there have been a lot of studies done. Harvard did quite a number of studies on first impressions, and some of the conclusions that they've come up with, or that they've realized through these studies, is if you dress better, if you dress well, a couple of things: you actually are more creative. You are more effective at doing what you do. You're more efficient. And it's a lot of it is the illusion from somebody looking at you.
Right.
But if you dress better, they will think that you are more successful and thus pay you more money.
Right. And we all want that, right?
We all want that. So when you're looking at somebody, the very first thing that you discern is their social status. So, I mean, if you look at somebody, you could tell if they unfortunately live on the street.
Right.
Or if they perhaps live in a really nice house. That's the first thing that you detect. So live on, as I call it, in the box. You'll hear me refer to this, in the box. When you're looking at somebody in the box, you can tell how they look, in its background, colors, how they dress, their hair. You can tell their social status, again, and not how much money they made, but it's a pretty good indicator.
Right. And style and fashion, it's funny because many people poo-poo it. Oh, it doesn't matter. I'm going to do a great job, all those things. And I remember years ago, when I was still working for somebody else, we were interviewing for a position at our company. Now, we were an ad agency, and and this would have been a junior position, but it was still fairly good paying. And this young woman came in, and she was early 20s. She might have just been out of college. And as they say in the South, bless her heart, because she was not dressed the way she wanted to be dressed. Her skirt was too short. And so she spent a good portion of time pulling down her skirt. I mean, just tugging the whole time. And she was rather bosomy, and she had on a low cut top. So she was also pulling up the whole time. And, she wasn't someone we were going to hire. I mean, we did need somebody with more experience and things like that. Her resume had typos. I mean, there were all sorts of things. And she asked me afterwards for some tips. And I thought, this young woman, and I probably broke every HR rule in the book by actually talking to her about this. But I said, okay, first of all, you got to fix the typos. We probably wouldn't have even brought you in except you knew somebody. I said, so fix the typos. I mean, to me, that really is somebody's first impression. But I said, okay, we need to talk about how you were dressed. And she said, I know, but I can't afford a suit. I said, I'm not saying you're going to Macy's or someplace like that. I said, there are consignment stores. Goodwill has appropriate clothes. I said, because you were so uncomfortable the whole time you were being interviewed about how you were dressed that you missed answering questions right and all sorts of things. And that still holds true. When we're on, say, a Zoom call, if you're thinking, is my top too low? Or, can I see the stain on it? All these various things. that's going to be what you're focusing on, even if nobody ever even caught it.
Right. Exactly. So it's so important that you feel comfortable, and you should always dress up.
Right.
No one's ever going to say, wow, she was really overdressed. Maybe a little bit, but you will always notice when somebody's underdressed. You will always notice their shoes in particular. Of course, we don't have to worry about that.
I saw that stat. It was going around on Facebook yesterday. The first thing anybody ever notices is your shoes. And I'm thinking, well, I don't know that I look at somebody's shoes. I might eventually, but
if somebody walks in the room, either a man or a woman who has fabulous shoes, you will notice their shoes. It's just because your eye naturally goes up and down when you look at somebody. It doesn't go left and right. It goes up and down. I mean, you would notice if they had one leg,
right?
You know, if they walked into a room. But visually, you're doing a vertical look, and you would notice if they have nice shoes,
right?
Nice
or not. I mean, you know, when I see someone in, say, a gentleman in a dark suit, like charcoal, something like that, and brown shoes, I'm like, whoa. Now, sometimes they're making a fashion statement. I will say that. But if it's just they put on brown shoes,
that's the style now for men.
Well, and it's funny because they're a lighter brown shoe, like a camel color. But yeah, if it's, did they get dressed in the dark and they didn't notice they had brown shoes on? That's where I'm like, okay.
Actually, I was in Portugal a couple of years ago. And I was on a shoe buying mission because it was Portugal, and I was there by myself for much of the time. And on the way back, I came back and I was noticing, wow, everybody's shoes are so great here. Men have beautiful shoes. And I was on the airplane. I had a 5:30. I had to be at the airport at 5:30, way too early for a 6 o'clock flight or whatever time the flight was. And I noticed this one young guy. He was really well dressed, and he was in front of me at the security counter. And he had his shoes in the bin, and his shoes looked terrible.
Oh,
and
no.
The whole time, the whole week and a half, 2 weeks that I was there, I kept noticing everybody has really nice shoes. And I get on the plane, and I'm trying to go back to sleep, and I put my blinders on, and I kept thinking it was all about the shoes. So it was all about the shoes. And I'm like, that's it. I ripped my blinders off. I grabbed my computer and I wrote a blog. It's called All About the Shoes. And it's about men's shoes.
Right.
And this is on my website. My website is shelleygoldenstyle.com. And it's all about men's shoes.
Right. You know,
coloring, how to keep them, what it says about you.
Oh, yeah. And it drives me nuts when men or women have tennis shoes on and are nicely dressed. And I understand they might have a mile walk to wherever. You can still wear nice flats. And it's just one of those pet peeves that I know it's just silly, and fashion sometimes has to give way for comfort. But yeah, it's like, oh my gosh. But I love the fact that on Zoom, we really aren't seen more than, couple inches below our chin, so we can have our shorts on. So I have shorts on and flip-flops. And I know a lot of people, there's a variety of things that people wear, but it is kind of one of those things where when you're dressing for the part, it is, kind of the whole thing. And so like my shorts are nice shorts. They don't have holes in them or anything like that. If I stood up, I wouldn't be embarrassed, maybe is the easiest way to put it.
Yeah. No, well, on Zoom, it's really important. That's one of the things that I really promote is wear something that you feel, well, for a woman, I would say that you feel lovely in, that you feel pretty in, because you want to look good. Because maybe if you have meetings all day on Zoom, maybe one of those meetings is you don't know this person and you still need to make a good first impression. And even though you think, okay, well, maybe I don't really need to look that great today, but it's actually for you. If
because you're looking at yourself the whole time.
And usually people are critiquing themselves. They're touching their hair. So they're fixing their collar, at some point.
Mhm.
But I mean, I get it when people talk to me because then they know what I'm doing.
Mhm.
Kind of like the new Zoom makeover queen. And
I know. I was like, oh my gosh, how should I dress? What do I do?
and it's interesting that we're both wearing royal blue today. It's the color du jour.
Yes. Mhm.
And so it's really important, especially on Zoom. It's
Mhm.
super important to wear solid colors.
Mhm.
And I can elaborate on that now, or we can talk about it later.
Sure. And I used to do, and I still do, media training. So a lot of it is the same thing. You really don't want uh, necklaces and earrings and things that are going to catch the light. But yes, solid colors. There is a reason to wear a solid color. So tell us a little bit more about that.
Well, I've actually, as a pivot, I didn't think about, gee, how can I pivot during COVID-19? It was one of those things that happened the first week.
Mm-hmm.
I was doing a workshop with somebody, and instead of helping people look great and feel confident in person,
Right.
I thought, well, I could help them look great and feel confident in the box.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've actually come up with this 5-step process that I take people through. I have presentations, I do individual.
Oh, perfect.
I work with companies, organizations, and the first step is camera angle.
Yes.
That you really want to look straight ahead into the camera. It also helps keep your body ergonomically in the best possible position. So you're sitting up straight, your neck isn't looking down, you're not looking up if the camera's too high. The second thing I work with people on is lighting, because lighting is actually the first thing that you notice.
Right.
You notice when somebody's in the dark. You notice when somebody's overlit. You notice when someone has a window on one side and half their face is lit and half their face is in the dark. So lighting is actually the first thing that you notice. So it's the most important thing to get right. The third thing I talk about is background. I'm getting to clothing, but it's background. And this is actually just kind of, I find this fascinating in my own life. I lived in Amsterdam for 10 years. And when I lived there, I studied European art, and in particular, the Dutch masters. And so 10 years, it's a lot of time to study art and architecture, and painters, when they're painting, they have what they call lines of perspective, and they have intersections, and like that would be a focal point, a face, an eye. And so even on my screen, you have like this painting, my eyes, and then you have this plant down here. So there's actually a diagonal, and my eyes are smack dab in the middle of that diagonal. And that's intentional. And so the background needs to be nice, but not distracting.
Right.
And also it helps if there's you're not sitting in front of a white wall. It's not that it's boring, but it's a little on the boring side. I would definitely say that. So I help people create nice backgrounds in their home, because some people are in the kitchen, some people are in the bedroom. And even if you have a bed behind you, I have like little ways to help you have it look like a sofa or a day bed. And then
pillows, pillows.
It used to be a bed, now it looks like a sofa. So you've got this, what I call like this painting around you, which quite often has different elements. And if you wear solid colors, now we're to the color part. If you wear a solid color and you are front and center, you are acting as a color block, blocking out that pattern. Think of a large pattern with a solid colored dot on it. It blocks out the rest of it. So it helps act as a bullseye. So that you can look at, I look at you and I can see your face, but I also see your solid blue. And it helps me look at you with a bullseye. So, and I have this It's a little bit busy, but it's not distracting. There's no reflections. There's nothing that's very distracting. And if you look at me, I've got this solid color block on.
It does make a focal point.
It makes a focal point. And my lighting, I hope, maybe it's not perfect, it changes during the day, is even on my face, left and right. I don't have space in front of me to put big lights. So I put my lights at 10 o'clock and 2 o'clock so that they both cross over my face and it hits both sides of my face equally. And so that's the reason to wear a solid color. But I do not recommend white. I do not recommend black or brown. And the reason I don't recommend basically black and white is the camera picks up white first. Whatever is white in the box will be the camera will focus on that, and that'll be the lightest, whitest spot.
And it glows.
It glows, even if it's a picture frame that's way back there and the light is reflecting off of it, it'll shoot back to the camera. So whatever is white comes to the foreground, and it could be a little bit too much. If you wear, on the other hand, if you wear black recedes to the background.
It kind of sucks everything out.
And you will look smaller and less of a focal point. So it's really important to like stand out from your background and not blend in. And then I also have what I call Zoom makeup. That's my fifth step. And it's not street makeup, and it's not stage makeup, because we're having to create, like a painter, the illusion of a three-dimensional surface, not a two-dimensional plane. And so the only way to do that is with shading. And so I have, shading tips for your cheekbones, for your jaw, and and you also want to have a bullseye. You want to keep bringing that bullseye in and into your eyes and your mouth. So you might want to make sure you either have glasses on or prominent darker eyebrows. Maybe you need to pencil them in. And also you want to make sure that your lips show. So you might want to wear a not necessarily a darker lipstick, but a brighter lipstick. Light-skinned women should not wear any iridescent or shimmer.
Because that's, again, we got the glowy thing going.
Because it's actually like crushed pearls, and it's pearlescence that's reflecting off the light. Now, if you're dark-skinned, very dark-skinned, you want that pearlescence. You want the shimmer. So that will help create, again, a contrast of light and dark. You also want to be careful about lip gloss on your lips. Because
so you're not lips.
So the lip gloss will pick up the shimmer and the light, and you'll have like dark and white particle, like movement of your lips. So it's best to really have, for light-skinned women, to have matte makeup, matte lipstick, and it helps act as a bullseye.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, let's go back through and talk about each one of these now in more depth, because I think, as we were saying, so many people are having to do this. They had to do it overnight. March 13th, everything was hunky-dory, and then bam. And many people thought, most of us thought, this is going to last a month. And now we're heading into month 6, and this is not letting up. I've talked about this with other guests and with friends and people like that. I think really this is going to continue, even when the pandemic is done. I think many companies are going to say, hey, this was great. We're not having to pay to have people come in. We don't have to rent all of this floor space, all those various things. More importantly, we can expand our networks. Huge. I mean, you're in California. I'm in Atlanta. We couldn't do this if we were having to be in person. So I think many people are really going to discover this is a great way to be doing business. And, and then we have things like schools and all of those. I mean, that's just a whole different matter. But people, like we were saying, we're forced into this, and so for the most part, they were not Zoom ready, shall we say. And they're still trying to figure out what the heck to do. So let's really go back and go through, because this is going to be the way we are functioning. This is how we're networking. This is how we're doing business, whether it's with people you've worked with for 20, 30 years, or the person that, oh my gosh, you're hoping is your next big client. We have to impress them with the box. And so how are we doing that? And so, this I think is just fascinating. So let's go back and talk about, the first thing was camera, and I was telling you before we started the program, I have a brand new camera. This is only the third time or so that I use it. I have a separate camera. I'm not using the one on my phone. I'm not using the one that, a lot of people have them on their monitors. And I have it separate. I could move it around, and then of course it just thoroughly messed things up. But I like it because I have big monitors, and if I were to put it up on top or be part of that, I'd be looking up, and that's just such an attractive picture. Now it does help with my neckline, but and the nice thing is cameras are really pretty inexpensive to get a nice camera.
They are, yeah. So you can, the one thing about whether you use the camera built into your computer, built into your monitor, or you have an exterior camera. As I said, the most important thing is that it is when it forcing you to sit up straight.
Yes.
Not like this.
Yeah. If I had mine lower,
You want to put it in a way that forces you to sit up straight, so that your body is ergonomically best. Right. The first month and a half of COVID, I'm used to working with clients in person. So I was, occasionally I was on Zoom, but I had my laptop on my desk and I was looking down, and I have a 25-year-old traumatic neck injury. And
you were in pain.
I was in such pain. I went to my chiropractor's home and I laid on his bed, and that was great. But I had just moved, and now the chiropractor was an hour away. I'm now going to another chiropractor. Thank God, in a closer area. But like, that was a wake-up call for me. I need to sit in the best position. So whether you need to raise your chair, sit on a pillow, raise your monitor, somehow put it on a
Too
box.
bad we still don't have the gigantic phone books, right?
People have books. You can put it on a box. One of the things that I've used is kind of like in boxes. There's like, you put your paper here, paper there. Sometimes some computers fit perfectly in box. So you want to raise it. That's really key, because what you don't want to look at anybody's ceiling. So no ceilings and no floors. Right. So if you're speaking to somebody and either they're looking at you, you're looking at them, and you can see their ceiling or their floor, their camera angle's not right. Unless, of course, there's an angled ceiling or, so sometimes you want to make a little more intimate room, which I've done with a client. She had a big, huge living room, and that felt a little bit empty, even though, I've been there to her home, so when you walk in, it feels lovely. But we created a small little sitting vignette closer, so it felt a little more intimate. But that's important. So camera angle, no ceilings, no floors. You don't want to look under anyone's chin. You don't need to see any woman's hair.
I know. We're not getting it styled as much. We don't need to see roots.
Yeah, right? Whose color is growing out. So you don't want to see the top of their head, and you don't want to look up their nose or under their chin. So that's really important. Now, in terms of positioning yourself in the box, I have a kind of a couple of like little simple hacks, little tips on how to position yourself. So sometimes I take my hand, I put my fingers together, and I put my hand on top of my head. If maybe my top pinky is, or two fingers are on the top of the box, I know I'm in a good position. Okay. You want your eyes in the top third of the box. You don't even want your eyes in the middle. You want them in the top third. You also want your armpits at the bottom of the box.
Mhm.
The reason I say your armpits and not, the top of your shoulders, so it's just a head,
Mhm.
is so people can read your nonverbal cues.
Ah.
hmm so that's one of the things that
Mhm.
we're losing here on Zoom are the nonverbal
Mhm.
cues. It's, the shoulder in, like, if I cross my legs
Yeah,
to the
that.
right, I, all of
Mhm.
a sudden, if we were in person, you wouldn't notice if now I'm over here.
Mhm.
But all of a sudden, the Zoom fatigue is that we have to sit straight. We
Mhm.
have to sit still. We have to
Mhm.
sit in the middle. If you decide to sit back in your chair, all of a sudden, you look disinterested.
Right. Mhm.
And so that's where the Zoom fatigue fits in.
Mhm.
But, so if you could have your armpits at the bottom of the box and no lower for women, because then you do not want your breasts to
Mhm.
be at the bottom of
Right.
the
You don't want them kind of resting on the box. I mean, I'm not quite sure how to say that any other way.
right? But the reality is what happens is that they will physically be the closest thing to the camera.
Mhm.
They will look bigger than they actually are.
Right. Right.
Because you will be in the foreground.
Mhm.
So that's why you want top, but to your armpits. And you could
Mhm.
actually have part of your armpit show,
Mhm.
or maybe not part of the
Mhm.
armpit show. But then if if everybody is pretty much in those
Mhm.
dimensions, it feels like we're all sitting at the same table.
Right. Yeah,
And
and we've all been on parts of Zoom calls where either somebody is so close that you're like, "Ooh, I can count your freckles,"
yeah,
or,
it-
they're far enough away that it's like, "Hello,
right,
hello."
right. But ideally,
Mhm.
just as though you and I, say we had 9 people in our Hollywood Squares box and we all had the same perspective, it's
Mhm.
like, wow, we could all feel like we're sitting at the
Mhm.
same table, but we have a slightly different
Mhm.
background, a slightly different angle
Mhm.
background sitting at the table. And
Right.
it's more intimate. We could talk more
Mhm.
freely. We could read each other's body language a little
Mhm.
bit. So that is really like some of the best positioning advice
Right.
that I have for
Right.
you.
And one of the things that drives me nuts is camera position. I've there's I'm from Colorado, so we're University of Colorado. Last week they announced no football. This is
Yeah.
tragic. And so we were watching a lot of the press conferences, and one of the people had his camera a little too far away and too low. And so we were, and we could see the ceiling. We could see all sorts of things around him because he was a little far away. So we could see. Now he clearly had, like, he had trophies and things like that. So his bookcase was nice, but he was at a very odd angle. And to me, it was very distracting. I wouldn't even pay attention to what he was saying because it was like, somebody tell him to sit different.
Right. So Deb, that's what I do.
Mm-hmm.
So I've created this Zoom makeover,
Mm-hmm.
as I call it, which I think is a really fun name.
Mm-hmm.
So the Zoom makeover and the 5 steps I go through
Mm-hmm.
eliminates all of these distractions.
Right.
That's what I aim for, so that the camera angle is at the right angle.
Mm-hmm.
The lighting is good. There isn't a distraction
Mm-hmm.
if you're unevenly lit.
Right.
The background. Sometimes backgrounds
Mm-hmm.
are a mess.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So sometimes they're a mess.
Mm-hmm.
So here's a few suggestions. I don't know if you want to go in order of lighting and then backgrounds.
I don't care. I've written them all down so I can jump around.
So let's just talk about background since
Okay.
we're talking about it. So here's some advice that I have on backgrounds. You don't want anything that is so distracting, a big, loud piece of art that is taking my eye away from you.
Mm-hmm.
Again, you want to be in like
Right.
like third of the box.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have a bookshelf behind you, which is great,
Mm-hmm.
you want all the books to be in a vertical position. You don't want some horizontal, some vertical, some hanging on an angle.
Yeah, because people they'll start focusing on that.
They're going to start focusing. If they're all vertical, our eyes are used to seeing books in stacks in a vertical position. And also, it doesn't even matter what the books are.
Right.
Because then they become benign. Yes, if you want to be, put them in size order, that's great. but they become benign.
Mm-hmm.
And additionally, if you have things on your bookshelf, such
Mm-hmm.
as picture frames, you want to make sure that they are not reflecting the light.
Right.
So there might be a little glimmer
Mm-hmm.
of light that's reflecting on a picture
Mm-hmm.
frame, or maybe you have a picture on the wall.
Mm-hmm.
So now that your camera angle is correct,
Mm-hmm.
and you have a piece of art or a
Mm-hmm.
framed certificate
Mm-hmm.
on the wall behind you,
Mm-hmm.
it can now be reflecting the light.
Right.
And that's distracting. So
Mm-hmm.
again, and that'll look white.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the first thing that the camera will
Right.
see, is this
Right.
white light. So, maybe I've actually worked with a woman, and it worked out really well, is that she took off a framed piece of art and put a painting on the wall.
Right. So there wasn't that glass there. Mm-hmm.
It wasn't the glass.
Mm-hmm.
Additionally, what you could do is have plants. I think plants
Mm-hmm.
in your box, it's really nice. It's really soft.
Mm-hmm.
If you and I were going to go meet somewhere at
Mm-hmm.
a cafe
Right.
or a restaurant or coffee shop,
Mm-hmm.
coffee shop has different connotations in Amsterdam, but if you would,
Mm-hmm.
we would go to some place that had a really nice
Mm-hmm.
ambiance.
Right.
Chances are they'd have some plant somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
So whether you have a plant, a large plant,
Mm-hmm.
a small plant, some flowers.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I think orchid. You can go get inexpensive orchids.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they don't have to be real even.
No,
as long as they look real. Mm-hmm.
Right. It just adds a little bit of softness.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't look like you're just sitting against a white wall.
Right. Right.
So that's also really nice.
Mm-hmm.
Also, you do not want a window behind you.
Right.
Oh my God, so many times you get on calls,
Mm-hmm.
or I do Zoom makeovers
Mm-hmm.
with clients and workshops, that someone thinks, oh, I'm sitting in my lovely room with
being bathed by natural light.
Right. And they are in the dark.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So you want it simple. I was actually on a woman was attending one of my workshops the other day, and she lived in a very eclectic house, and she likes her eclectic house. And I said, well, let's work on your eclectic house, maybe so that it's a little simpler.
Mm-hmm.
Not quite so busy.
Right.
You don't, maybe if she had a table, like a buffet, a dining buffet.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm.
If maybe she had 6 things on it, we cut it down to 3 or 4.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't quite so busy.
Right.
You don't want anything that is so distracting that you're gonna look at it, thinking, now what is that? Is that her calendar? Is that her kids' art?
Mm-hmm.
Is that is that a sculpture?
Mm-hmm.
If somebody has to look at something and figure out what it is,
right,
they're being distracted and they're not focusing in on you.
Well, and this is interesting because I have a screen behind me. I have a gray screen. And for those who are listening, as opposed to watching this, think about what we had behind us for 6th grade pictures, right? That's about what it is. And, and this is fairly new. I've started using this, I don't know, in the pre-COVID, because I do a lot of videos, but I had people that said what I have behind me, and I'm actually going to move this screen here in a second, but people said what I had behind me was distracting enough that they weren't listening to what I was saying. And so I thought, okay, I can either change what's behind me. And I have, and so it'll be interesting because you haven't seen what's behind here. I promise it's okay. But or I could do the screen. And we're going to talk about green screens in a minute because that's a totally different creature. But I'm still not sure about the screen because it's very blah. And one of your suggestions, as we were talking before, is I could put things on the screen. I could put the program logo, some things like that. But let me see if I can move this without making too much of a disaster. Whoa! Crash into the door. There we go. Yay! So now you can see I've got a big piece of art behind me, and I bought this deliberately to have behind me just for that. But then I can see that my logo over here is printed on white paper and it's glowing. So that's probably not a good thing to have. You know, and so yeah, it's been interesting because when I'm just chatting with people on Zoom, I don't put the screen up. I just have what's back here naturally. So it obviously needs some tweaking.
Are you up for a little advice?
Go for it. Tweak away.
Okay, so here's my suggestion for you today. Because of your skin complexion, so I'm a certified color consultant, and so I'm really passionate about having people wear the right colors, and not just wear the right colors, decorate their homes and offices and websites and business cards with their correct colors, because it helps you look your best, helps you look healthiest.
Right.
So the reason I'm not so keen on that medium to dark gray background is it's too dark for your fair complexion.
Okay.
So I like the lighter background. Granted, I think that piece of art, that the light blue and the light green, the light blue is not your best color.
Okay.
So you're surrounded.
It did change my complexion when I moved that.
Yep. So you're surrounding yourself with a color that's not your best color. If you had a warmer wall, so whether it's, I would definitely do a warmer color. So you could do like a creamy tan, or a honey color, or kind of a peachy kind of flesh tone color, or I would stay away from grays.
Okay.
Definitely stay away from grays, not your best color.
Well, and obviously I don't want to go warm as in yellow.
But you know, they have so many warm colored walls now that you can, like tans and like all that whole tan, tan beige, family of colors. If I say beige to you, your color beige is different than my color.
Right.
Beige. If I say tan, my color tan is different than your color tan. For in your mind.
Right.
So
well, and like so these are cork boards up here. That's probably more of the color. I mean, obviously that's that's a little dark, but that's more of a warmer color.
It's more of a warmer color. Exactly. So now you took the gray away, and I see the camera is trying to pick up on the light color. So now your hair looks darker.
Right.
So it's kind of sucking up all the light color behind you. So your coloring has changed. So for everybody listening to this, you really need to pay attention to what's behind you. Is it light or dark? And you might want to experiment, because just with Deb, you could see her hair, her skin color completely changed by changing the color behind you, because that's what the camera picks up, light and dark. And sometimes the same goes with your clothing. So say we create a background and the colors all work, and then you wear, depending upon who the person is and how they're dressed and what position they're in. If you put a dark colored shirt on, the camera again will now have that color recede to the background, and it'll focus on something lighter. If you wear a lighter, whiter shirt, it'll make your background and your skin tone different and focus in on your lighter, brighter, whiter shirt. Right. So the color is really important on Zoom, because it changes by changing one dominant color in your box. It changes everything.
Right. And the thing that I'm thinking about as I'm looking at this and just, thinking how it was with the solid gray behind me, and then now I think I aged. I think, and I can say that you would be so polite, you wouldn't say that, but I aged when we went to this different color, because it changed my skin tone. And now part of that is my lighting, and, and we're going to talk about lighting too, because I have the lighting for the gray screen. I mean, I've got lights and a big light up above and things like that. But yeah, I did. I think I aged. Ugh, we don't want to do that.
Actually, what I'm noticing is right now, I'm getting some of the light green reflection in your glasses.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's bouncing back. Right.
So what's behind you is so important. And sometimes it's easier if it's benign. So for example, I'm looking at you and I can see that it's a kind of a Japanese, probably a Van Gogh, or as the Dutch pronounce it, Van Gogh, print, you know, of a cherry tree. But sometimes it's easier on the eye if it's an abstract piece of art.
Like what you have.
Well, it's actually, it appears abstract because it's cubist in style, but there's actually 5 women sitting at cafe tables.
Right.
But because it's cubist, it's in blocks and it appears abstract. So if you have a piece of art, it's easier, like, oh, it's abstract, then people aren't going to notice it. Whereas maybe if sometimes there's art and there's actual items, there's a sunset, there's a house, there's a tree, then I'm going to notice, oh, there's the sunset, there's the house, there's the tree.
Right.
So if it's abstract, it's easier.
Right.
So, and additionally, what I find works really well, okay, so you have a large piece of art behind you. It's not perfectly centered. It's a little bit off center, which is fine. But if you take a piece of art, a little bit like I have, and put it up over your shoulder somewhere and only have a corner of it show. So you don't even need the whole thing. So sometimes I'll be working with somebody, creating a visual, you know, like, you know, a pleasant visual in their box. And I'll say, take that piece of art, and instead of putting it right behind you, move it over to the side and raise it up so I could only see part of it. And again, so that will also, it'll become more benign. I'm not looking at this solid piece of art behind you. There's a piece of art over there, and maybe there's a plant over there.
Right. Well, and you know, I'm also thinking, you know, the position is important because, like, right now I have a tree branch that's going right in my ear. You know? And we've all seen things like that, right? So it's, you know, and so look at yourself and see what it looks like, because we're sitting here staring at each other. But we look at ourselves. And, you know, and so just look at what other people are seeing. You know, I mentioned green screens, and green screens have become kind of the rave. I've known green screens for years because I'm a PR person, and television stations use green screens. You know, the weatherman is never really standing in front of whatever's going on. He's standing in front of a green screen. And there's always lots of hilarious things with green screens. Of course, the first thing you have to really pay attention to if you're using a green screen is that you don't wear the same color.
Or you don't have anything that.
Oh yeah, you know, when the queen did her little video thing there several months ago, and she wore green. I saw so many memes of people that changed what she was wearing into something totally different because it was the green of a green screen. But you know, green screens are fun because you can play with backgrounds. You can do all sorts of things, but you have to do it correctly. I mean, you know, how many of us have been watching somebody where you know they've got a green screen because they're glowing, or it's not working right. You know, they move and all sorts of things. So be very careful with a green screen. What other tips have you? But you use green screens to create an office behind people, or you know, something visual.
So I just like to talk a little bit about virtual backgrounds. Excuse me. So yeah, so when you're working with a virtual background, what a green screen does, and people say, well, why do I need a green screen? Is it helps the image stick. Because I'm sure you've seen so often, you know, people, their hair is growing, or if they have a cup, the cup goes in and out, and then you can see somebody's hand going up to their mouth, and you don't know what's, you know, you know that they're drinking something, but you don't really see the cup that they're drinking from. So it helps the image stick. But what I'd like to do is talk a little bit about virtual backgrounds.
Okay.
just because this is, I'm working with people with real backgrounds, and I'm also helping people design and redesign some virtual backgrounds that really are less than desirable. So, so first of all, yes. So if you're on Zoom, Zoom has some of their own virtual backgrounds that you can upload, and that's fine. Personally, I find visuals sometimes a little bit distracting, especially if they have moving palm trees.
Right. And you know they're not on the beach.
Right, or waves. So that's one thing. So another thing is you can actually upload your own photograph. You can take your own picture of your own garden, your own home. You know, maybe it's a different room, and you can upload it. But my suggestion to you on that is make sure the perspective is the same.
Right. You don't want to have a couch that's too high or.
Right. As a matter, I did a Zoom makeover with a client, a gentleman who's very soulful. He's an emotional intelligence coach. And he had this lovely Italian sofa in this living room, a whole with windows, big windows, but it looked like he was sitting on the floor. Because the way the camera took a picture of that room, even though I know that they're low Italian sofas, is from like down to up.
Right.
So the perspective wasn't right. And sometimes, again, the camera, they're taking a perspective from up and down. And sometimes I've gone on different websites. I don't think I should mention any names here. Of the decorators can upload their images of their decorated rooms. And you can just type in like home office or library, home library. And you'll have all these beautifully decorated rooms. You can, or you go on, whatever, you can go on the website and find different rooms. And you can upload that. But you want to make sure, test it out, so that it looks like the coloring works for you, that your hair doesn't blend in or stand out, that the perspective feels good. And so these are things that you want to look for. Now, just last week, I was on 2 calls with 2 different women. They were so excited. They just had custom-made virtual backgrounds.
Ooh.
And they were both horrible.
Oh, no.
One woman who was a compassion therapist, she had this like electric green virtual background and she was so excited about it, and it had her logo in the corner, and it was like one drop coming off a leaf into a water that had like the rings, and she was so excited about it. But that green was so disturbing. Like, and if she's a compassion therapist,
she wasn't making you relax.
I wasn't in a Zoom makeover session with her. We were just getting to know each other. And it's like, oh my God, it wasn't calming. So you want to make sure that the colors are not offensive.
Right.
Another thing, and then this other call that I was on, this woman who has blonde hair and fair skin, she had this bright fuchsia background, and she was also a therapist, and just happened to have 2 therapists, or she was a coach actually, and it was this bright fuchsia background. And at first she was like sitting in the corner here because whoever designed this virtual background for her put her name of her company in big letters up on top, a big flower here.
So she was trying to position herself.
She's trying to position herself, and she had just gotten it. And I said to her, I gave her advice because we were up doing a Zoom makeover. I said, tell the person who designed this virtual background for you, I didn't say anything about the color, that, when we were positioning her, that everything needs to be over your left or right shoulder. So you don't want anything over your head.
Right.
You always want to position your logo over. If you take your hands up like this, like, okay, I give up, that's where your logo should be. That's where any information should be, the name of your company, the name of your business.
Right.
So that way it's not distracting. You could have your head, close to the top of the frame. They can still see the proportion of your body. You don't want anything so big and distracting that it's distracting. So these are some tips on virtual backgrounds. You don't want the color to be over glaring. You want it to be, yes, maybe you want it on brand, but a lot of these people who are all of a sudden doing virtual backgrounds for people, they're not really experts at this.
They might be a website designer and that, which really does show totally different placement of images.
Right, exactly. Or a graphic designer, but they're not like a Zoom expert. I mean, I kind of claim myself as a Zoom expert because I'm really helping people look their best, feel confident. And I am a personal branding image consultant, so I am all about being on brand.
Right.
So whatever it is that you always look on brand, your visual is always on brand.
Right. Oh my gosh, we've only got about 5 minutes left and we're going to run late. I'm just going to tell everybody we're running late because I really want to talk about lighting also. But I have one final thought on the virtual backgrounds. When you're doing this for business, your virtual background shouldn't be like one of the ones that Zoom has is the Golden Gate Bridge or outer space. No, now if you're just chatting with your team members and things like that, okay, that's one thing. And now they've added where you like Instagram filters, so you can have a halo and you can have ears. Okay, would you do that in the office? I mean, that really is my first thing. No, probably not. So it still has to be professional. So even though it's cute and it's fun, save those for your friends, save those maybe for an evening type of event where you might have had an adult beverage and then you can really freak people out. But yeah, it's, it still needs to be a professional background no matter what it is. And also one of the other things that we always need to be thinking about is, what is back there? Is somebody going to walk past? Are the dogs going to stroll by? All of those various things. And so, as Shelley said, you might need to rearrange where you are so that that's not happening. I've done interviews on the program before where I have had people come strolling through. It's funny, but it immediately distracts from what we're talking about. And so you don't want to do that. So, like I said, we don't have too much time left, but I really want to talk about lighting because that is the other thing. And it's funny because this right here is one of the things that drives me nuts. I've got my glasses on and it reflects anything and everything. Unfortunately, I have to wear my glasses in order to be able to do this. So lighting gets very tricky for people.
Right. So I have some really awesome tips.
Cool.
So I'm going to just show you my lighting. So let's see. Let me backtrack. So I am just kind of like from way back, I am a Post-it girl.
Cool.
And what I do is I take, and I do this with clients, I take yellow and fuchsia Post-its. You can take the light yellow or the light pink, or there's an orangey colored Post-it, and I put it over my lights. And the reason I do that is, let me show you my light on my right. I have, it's just a generic desk lamp that has one color white light. And I have two pink Post-its and a yellow Post-it. And if I remove that's the light. So it actually helps soften the light and makes my skin peachier looking. I actually have a number of lights around me and they all have paper on them. Because this way, a couple of things. One, it diffuses the light so it doesn't feel like you have a spotlight on you. That's number one. So I even have a small ring light, and I just took a piece of lined notebook paper and I tore it up and taped it on, because then I don't have this white, I have it right here. I don't have this ring, and you also don't see the ring in my glasses because I normally wear glasses.
Yeah, see, like you can see in my glasses.
So putting paper over the light helps diffuse it. Also, when I'm doing a Zoom makeover with men who have no hair on the top,
oh yeah, and they're gonna shine,
or have very high foreheads, one of the things that I advise them to do, especially if they have ceiling lights because they're in their home, they're in their home office, is put a piece of paper over the light. Or I've advised people to put paper, it could be printer paper, in the window to eliminate the glare.
Right.
So this
yeah,
way,
I actually have blackout drapes because it's so bright.
Yeah. So, but it helps eliminate the glare, and it diffuses the light, and that's really what you want. You also want to put your lights at 10 o'clock and 2 o'clock.
Yeah, mine are here, and then I do have one that when my background is there, it's shining on my background.
So that's important too. I actually also have 2 lights in my background. So I have a light on this cabinet, and I have a light on my plant.
Right.
And you wouldn't know that I'm not just in a light bright room, but otherwise it would look like I have a black piece of, it would be very black. I'm sorry, it looks like the wind's picking up. It would be very dark behind me. So the lighting is really, really important.
Right.
And you can, sometimes you can get these ring lights or other lights that have warm, neutral.
Right. I set mine to yellow.
Right. Exactly. I could set it to yellow, and so I could even change it right now. I could see what I'm doing. So I just changed it, and it changed my skin tone. So I can change it. So I use Post-its. I use white paper, and so I had a client. She had a window in front of her. She literally put her kids' pink construction paper with her kids' art project.
Right.
That pink paper in the window, and it gave her a pinker look as opposed to like a washed out blue look from her computer screen.
Right.
And so these are tips that you could do for lighting.
Right. And speaking of computer screen, I've got 2 big monitors, and they're big, and I need them both when I'm doing things like this because I've got various things that, obviously I have the Zoom screen, but then I also have your bio, I've got your website, I've got all sorts of things. And so I discovered I turn it to the night light. So here's what it looks like if I don't have the night light on. Wow. Because it's a blue light, right? Totally. Now, actually right now, that's not too bad. But so I turn it to the night light, which is a yellower tone. And then you can play with it. Like I can make it really yellow. Oh, look, I'm sick. Or I can go to a much more natural color, probably pretty much like that. But yeah, I mean, it makes a huge difference. This is without. And it really does give me a blue tint to my skin. And I notice it especially because of the difference with your skin tone.
Yeah.
And then, so then I turn it back on and it looks more natural. Now, of course, the funny thing is I have to remember to turn it off because I have trouble seeing my monitor when it has that yellow tint. But yeah, I mean, that's just a little thing that I learned to do that because I would try turning my monitors off and all sorts of things. And so I just turn the night light on, and that's just in your settings. And then you can play with it there. And you can obviously play with the light settings in your camera, and so play with all of those things. And I forgot one of the things I want to say with camera, don't be holding it. The worst thing in the world is when we've got the jiggly higgledy piggly thing going on. No, you can get a little tripod, you can stack it on books, you can do whatever. I mean, like mine has, if I were using it, I've got the little guys, and so then I can, make it a stand. I mean, all those things. But yeah, don't try and do a Zoom call, especially for business, holding it, because unless it is a 2-second call, you're going to move.
Right. I have one more piece of advice, and this is for those people on Zoom. So Zoom has a lovely special feature.
Oh yes,
with a couple years and wrinkles out of it.
It softens us.
Yes. So if you go into if you go onto the bottom left corner of your Zoom screen and you have the little video camera, there's an up arrow. Click on the up arrow and you'll see video settings. And in the video settings, there's a little box that you should check off that says touch up my appearance. And what it does is it actually blurs the visual a little bit.
Just slightly. I mean, so that we still look natural.
Right. But it actually, you don't need makeup.
Right.
It takes some of the hard edges. It
Mhm.
smooths your skin tone, and you will definitely want that.
I love it. I love it. Well, oh my gosh, Shelley, we need to do this again because we didn't talk makeup, and we all kind of scoff at makeup, especially if you're a male type person. But you might need a little. Now, we're not going to tell you lipstick, so maybe it's tinted chapstick, or something.
Well, it's either lipstick or putting a little bit more color on, but it's not street makeup. So
Right.
don't look in the mirror and go, oh, that's what I normally do. But you also don't want, for light skin complexions, you don't want anything iridescent, and you don't want any lip gloss.
Right.
So I always keep chapstick in my desk drawer because it's matte.
It's a matte, yes.
If you
Now,
want to
I
look-
discovered something today. I have a new one that I just started, but it's flavored. And so it was like, and so I had to really pay attention and not be doing that. Yeah, and
you don't
so
want to be licking your lips the whole time.
I know, because it's like, no, that was maybe not a good idea. But we have tons more that we could be talking about. So we will definitely have you on again, because as we've said, this is going to be something that we're going to be using. It's great. I do an online networking group every Tuesday now, where, we've got people from all over that are being a part of this group. And I think we are discovering, we don't have to go out and about. We might miss people. So we're going to do these Zoom things, but, and again, I don't care what we call it. We're Zooming right now, but there's Zoom, there's Skype, there's, all sorts of different things.
Teams, WebEx.
Right. And so it's video. But yeah, it's great. So between now and then, how do people find you and connect with you online? Because you can be doing this worldwide with folks.
Absolutely. So I am in San Francisco, in the San Francisco Bay Area. The name of my company is Shelley Golden Style. This is my new business. I am working with individuals. I'm working with companies. I'm giving presentations to organizations. I'm doing workshops. And it's all about what we spoke about, how to look your best on Zoom. If you want to email me, I'd be more than happy to have a conversation with you. You can email me at Shelley, so it's SHELLEY, don't forget the E. So Shelley at ShelleyGoldenStyle.com.
Perfect.
And
I love it.
I would be happy to. I work, like I said, individuals, groups, companies, and I'm really passionate about it. And I work with people with what they have.
Right.
And that's really, that's the important thing to me. Is this is what people have, and I'm just trying to help them make the best of what they have.
Right. We're not saying that you're going out and redesigning your office, or, now you have to have a good camera. You do have to have good speakers. We didn't even talk about that. I have an earpiece. I don't like headphones because it would mess up my hair. But, and granted, I have a different microphone than a lot of people. I have a podcasting microphone, but, even all of my equipment is under $500. So, it's not going to be a big thing. But we do need to put our best face forward. And so it's not all that tricky to be able to do that, because it is professional. We need to remember this is going to be the way things are, folks. So, take the steps to do it. Shelley's got a great blog. She's got a lot of great tips there. And again, it's ShelleyGoldenStyle.com. And so I love that we're going to talk again. We have to, we just have to do this again, because we didn't finish it. And so what I need to do, I need to work on my background and then have you on again. So that's the key. So I am Deb Creer. I've been having a delightful time talking with Shelley Golden. And until next time, everyone have a great day.
Tune in for our next program for even more trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. The Business Power Hour, hosted by Deb Creer, is proud to be part of the C-Suite Network.